we have put together a stellar, okay, let me tell you, a stellar panel of wine veterans. Now, I like to call them veterans, right? Because anybody that has over 10 years of experience are definitely veterans. So we have Chrishon Lampley of Love Corkscrew, who just got named the VP of AAAV. So that means I'm super excited to work with her. TJ Douglas, who just got honored with the Future 40 cover, okay? The Future 40 cover. And then we have and he's also, of course, progressive wine of in the urban grape. So let me just shout out his the name of his company as well. I mean, of course, when you're a cover man, that makes everybody starstruck. So let me just kind of like give that love. And then Chuck Speed. Now, I had the pleasure of meeting Chuck. Super dope guy. He's been doing some amazing work. He just got named the vice president of commercial planning for Volio Imports, and is working with Sun Goddess Wines, and that's Mary J. Blige's line. But before we get the whole panel up, the first person I need to get on here is Charles. Now, I love me some Charles Springfield, my Harlem brother, and I just want you guys to, I just want to give it up to him. Charles, welcome, because you are an amazing veteran in wine. You started off as a journalist, you're a wine educator, you're a sommelier, and most importantly, you're an author of 2 books. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And Dr. Bell, for that information. It's very exciting to be part of this. I was a part as a viewer in 2021. I was heavily in the chats. I was so excited. It was so amazing. So I'm very honored and privileged to kind of host this very first panel. So I want to welcome everyone who's online to, and Harlem's heating up, so Angela's used to it, but sorry about the sirens. But I want to welcome everybody to tonight's first panel. We'll give a little quick pause. And it's called How It Started, Black Wine Business Before 2020. So as Angela said, my name is Charles Springfield. I'm a certified sommelier, wine educator, and 2-time author based in New York City. I'm based in Harlem. Online, I'm known as the Wine Stylings, the Fresh Prince of Rosé, and Mr. Rosé My Way. So you can find me there. But long before 2020, Black wine entrepreneurs and professionals existed, although many of you didn't know about us. However, it wasn't really until the pandemic and the racial reckoning that prompted an explosion of community building and recognition of our triumphs being made in the Black wine culture. So tonight we chat with select wine veterans to unpack the changes, and celebrate the successes in their own wine journeys. So let me introduce you to our panelists. First, I want to introduce you to Chrishon Lampley. She is the founder of Love Corkscrew. Chrishon is a 15-year wine veteran and recently appointed to the VP of the AAAV, Association of African American Vintners. She's grown her brand nationally to almost 50 states and is giving back through the Clink Festival taking place in September. So, Chrishon, how are you doing today?
Amazing. I'm so excited to be here with you all.
Good. Welcome. So that was a brief introduction of you, but please tell the people about yourself in your own words. If you have one item you can describe as one of your biggest accomplishments thus far, please let us know about it.
Gosh, biggest accomplishments. Well, first of all, again, thank you for having me, Chrishon Lampley, owner of Love Corkscrew. I've been in the industry actually 20 plus years. I don't want to show my age here, but I've owned Love Corkscrew a decade now. I'm based out of Chicago. Again, I'm in several states of distribution, 18 states to be exact, in large big box stores like Walmart, Target, Whole Foods, Mariano's, Total Wines and More, Meyer, if I didn't name them. Just amazing stores, big box stores. And I ship about 40 states now. So started off, again, a Chicago kid, and just it grew like crazy, like wildfire, and over 1,900 accounts now. One thing that I would say that gets left off my bio is I come from a musical background, actually. I was always on stage. I was a classical trained pianist. So being with people and in front of people, because people always say, oh my God, Chrishon, you're such a people person. You make people smile all the time. Like, yeah, I was a musical kid. So I was always in front of others performing, if you will. So that's where my sales and marketing background started. So just a little bit.
Yes. I really enjoyed the TED Talk and learned that you wanted to be Annie.
I did. I had red hair. You guys can't see it through the gray now, but yes, I always wanted to be Annie.
It didn't happen, but you made it work with Amos Behaving, so that that's exciting too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So welcome to the panel. We're going to get back to you shortly, but next I want to introduce our next panelist and welcome TJ Douglas. TJ is the CEO and founder of the Drink Progressively Group. DPG holds a portfolio of innovative wine industry companies with a mission to build community through beverages. How you doing tonight, TJ?
I'm doing great. I mean, I'm so happy to be here. Proud to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're happy to have you and so excited to get the news about you and Wine Enthusiasts and the Future 40. And then on top of that, the cover as well. So also exciting surprise for all of us. So I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah. I was surprised the most about the cover, though. I didn't know.
Good. Pleasant surprises all the way around. I love it. So same thing for you. Like we did a brief bio for you, but please tell the people in your own words about yourself. And if there's one accomplishment that stands out to you the most so far.
Yeah. So I've been doing this since I was 14 years old. Started off as a dishwasher and worked my way up to, busboy, manager, bartender, did my time at McDonald's, which everyone has to do, right? And then moved to Boston in 2000 and just really got the true hospitality bug and started working in wine in about 2002, I think, when I was a beverage manager for a Todd English restaurant. And I've loved it ever since. One of my biggest accomplishments, though, actually has nothing to do with where I'm at in my career. It really is the fact that we were able to create in 2020 the Urban Grape Wine Studies Award for Students of Color, which is an endowment that my wife and I created at Boston University's, which is it's kind of like a two-parter thing. It's a year of education certification through the Elizabeth Bishop School, taught by a couple of masters of wine. And that's a program that I took many, many years ago when I was, much younger than I am now. And then it also has 4 3-month paid internships on all 4 sides of the wine industry that I've worked on. And it's just been awesome. And so that is truly the legacy that my family and I will have from the industry that I love the most.
Nice. So in addition to McDonald's, what is one of those things that never shows up on your bio that you think people should know about you?
Yeah, for me, it's really interesting is that what never shows up on my bio, it's for all of our bios, it's the accomplishments where we've worked, the awards that we've won, but it really is growing up with a single mom, only child, in the projects in New Haven on welfare. And I saw that as my mom at a later age got her college degree, was able to move us out of New Haven and into a safer place. We moved up to Vermont. And I saw that education was key. And so one of the things that doesn't end up in my bio is my backstory, but also I'm typically the person in my company over the years, over the 100, plus, people on our team that we've had that doesn't have a college education. I saved up money for school, worked really hard for 2 years, obviously in our industry. And then I ended up playing rugby and tore my knee up, and I had to drop out of college about 1.5 years after I saved money to get into college because I knew education was my out. So, to this day, and that really kind of hangs over me, but it's also why education is so important, not only for my own 2 kids, but also for people in our industry, which is why we created this program at BU.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to jump over to Chuck real quick, but we're going to finish discussion a little bit later. But so, Chuck, last but not least, we have another Charles who goes by Chuck. Your initials are actually CDS, is that correct?
Chuck D. Speed.
Oh my God. What's your middle name?
Delino.
So I'm CDS as well. I'm Charles Dion Springfield. So we're like wine twins almost. So thank you for coming. But I'm gonna tell the group about you a little bit. So Chuck Speed, of course, he's the head of sales for Sun Goddess Wines at Volio Imports. Before working with MJB, Mary J. Blige, he worked with the McBride sisters during the pandemic and has worked with major beverage companies for the past 20 years. So a lot of stories, I'm sure there. But first of all, how are you doing tonight?
Man, I'm great, man. We're celebrating hip hop, right? 50th anniversary of hip hop. O&D is right on our heels. So those of us who drive businesses with retailers and big distributors across the United States, it's go time for the industry. So I'm doing great. Thank you.
Yeah, we got to get ready for O&D for sure. So you can please tell the group about yourself in your own words, and if there's one major accomplishment that stands out to you the most thus far in your career.
Well, first of all, I'm new to wine. All right. If I this panelist, most folks have over 10 years being in the wine business. If you look at our leadership team, which I'm a part of, our team, our sales directors, they have over 15 years in wine. So I'm new to wine, but one of the things as I think about my trajectory and I think about some of the companies I've been with, I started my experience in adult beverage with Coors Brewing Company. So I had the opportunity to work with brands like Blue Moon, Coors Light, Coors Original, mostly on the East Coast, and mostly really leading distributors, leading sales organizations around consumer goods. And then I had the opportunity to work for Pernod Ricard, mostly in what we call field-based roles, so a state manager. So I did that for a number of years, and then I had the privilege to be promoted to commercial strategy and analysis, and that's really where I spent about 4 years working with emerging brands with Pernod Ricard in New York across multiple categories: vodka, Irish whiskey, rum. And that was really a learning experience to be able to work with people across operations, finance, trade marketing, digital media, corporate finance, division finance, and most importantly, the three-tier system as it relates to our distributors across the United States. And so, but one of the things, and as I move forward from that role, one of the things that really the special highlight of my career was working with the McBride sisters in the early parts of their development. At that point, I had never worked for a Black-owned company. Through my relationships with Pernod Ricard, I was introduced to a gentleman that had a really successful and dynamic experience in wine. And he called me, he's like, "Hey, Chuck, have you ever thought about getting into the wine business?" And I was like, "Don't you got to have all those credentials and stuff?" Because I'm a spirits guy, and I don't have all those credentials. He said, "No, man, it's did you know that that there's two Black women that own a wine company that's pretty hot?" And I was like, "You ever heard of McBride sisters?" And I was like, "No." And so I had the opportunity to meet Andrea and Robin, and I'm so blessed to have the opportunity to meet them. They introduced me to wine. I remember at the time it was like, "You get the customers, we'll talk about wine." And so,
Nice.
So that's a bit about me. My biggest accomplishment as I reflect back on 20 years in the business, incredible experience, and I learned from a lot of people. But my biggest accomplishment is really working with our community and working with the McBride sisters and leading a company at that time that was emerging. It didn't have national distribution. It had most of the distribution was with Kroger at that time, and to see that business go from fragmented business in a number of markets, but to see that company become the #1 African American owned wine company in the United States, and to be a part of that was truly, and I can tell you, selling Black Girl Magic is like selling, for me, it was like selling my family. It was selling Black women, and it was a passion of mine, and it was beyond the wine. It was really more about our culture, and our
Right.
people, right? And so So that it's one of the things I'm proud of and being a part of that. But that was my number one accomplishment in this industry.
That's amazing. As Dr. Bell said again, Black Girl Magic all day, right? just lots of changes, lots of growth, and lots to celebrate.
Right.
Now, so I want to turn this conversation back onto the topic at hand, and that's actually how it started. And so I'm always fascinated by everybody's origin story. Everybody has a unique origin story. We heard a little bit about Chuck's just now. TJ, and what about you as far as your origin story? How did you get into wine, and when did you really fall in love with the business?
Yeah. So here's the thing. So just like Chuck, I don't have any of the credentials. I'm not rocking a pin tonight, right? When I moved to Boston, I was much lighter bodied than I am now as a 45-year-old dad. But when I moved down here with, a 6'3" frame and 230 pounds, I applied for jobs for what I was good at, which was service and bartending. But because I was a big Black man, I got hired for being a bouncer, a doorman, and I was good at it and made people laugh and whatever. Until one day, a server didn't show up, and so I was able to cover that person's shift. And within a couple months, I became the head server for that restaurant, and that was really great. I'm like, wow, I'm good at this. I like it. It's fun. I like making people smile. I ended up working for Todd English, and here I am in Boston. And in Massachusetts, you have certain liquor licenses like we do in most states. And I was hired as the bar manager for this new Todd English restaurant in a kind of touristy place called Faneuil Hall. And the day before, as we're putting together the bar stools, the day before we were supposed to open for a business, we only got a beer wine license and cordial license, and we didn't get a full liquor license. Now, this is the time of, cranberry martinis and Cosmos and stuff. And I had no idea about wine. I wasn't a wine drinker. I was 23 years old. And we had this really old school cuvee system out back. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to make rent, I need to know about the wares that I'm selling. Right. So the first wine I ever learned about was Bourgogne Postagron. Right. And I'm like, what is this? I can't pronounce it. I don't know where it's from. I've never been to France. And it was really intimidating. But that really got the wine bug in me because I started diving into something that I didn't know. It challenged me. And then when I can relay that to a customer and get really good tips from it, and I'm like, oh, this thing's sustainable. And that was really the kickoff to like my time in the wine industry. And that was 20 years ago.
Wow, very cool. And Chrishon, same thing for you. When did you get into the wine business? I know you said it's 20 something. You want to give away your age and everything like that.
Right. I'm definitely the oldest here. Yeah, no, not doing that.
You look the youngest. You look the best. So that's all that matters.
I'll take it. Almost the big 5-0. So, but with the industry, I would say I fell in love with people. It was people. I remember just coming out of college and in college, everyone was drinking the Cosmos and the apple martinis and such. And I never was into that. So coming out of college, I went to my first wine tasting, which was at Bin 36. Anyone that knows Chicago, that was the coolest spot over by House the Blues. And it was owned by this guy named Enoch, who was from Africa. And it was just the vibe of people. And that's what I fell in love with. Because you're sitting here enjoying wine. Everyone's acting so classy, and I'm here 21 coming out like, what's going on here? I'm wearing my 7 jeans, looking cute. And I'm like, what is happening in here? This is not your typical, dive. And that was it for me. So that started, and then I'm not even going to go on because it's a long story, but just progressing to ownership of a bar, actually very well-known art bar and gallery here, to owning Love Corkscrew years and years later. So my love was in 1996, and I never looked back.
Nice. Very exciting. So I want to just take a few moments to think about this space. We work in a space that's not very diverse, especially 10, 15, 20 years ago. And anybody can take this question, or you can take it one at a time. How did you find the strength, or how were you able to show up as your most authentic Black self in some of these spaces? Anybody
Mine's a
want
very quick answer. Very quick answer. I was always authentic. I will always be my authentic self. And so when I showed up in this space, it did not look like us at all. But I took that from just growing up as one of the only Black families in the entire area that I grew up in, the burbs of Chicago, and being called the N-word, and people thought I had a tail. So I had this strength. I always had older parents. So it was this wisdom that they instilled in me. So showing up as my authentic self was easy. It may hit some people like a Mack truck, but I'm always very honest. It will always be honest, and will always be there to help anyone because I've been through it. So it wasn't hard at all.
Good. Chuck, what about you?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I you know what, I wish I had that level of confidence, but I didn't, right? And so, when I think about the experiences that I had, particularly working with, in this space and working in CPG, in the large companies that I've worked with, I think that I've been in meetings where I was the only brother, right? Or there were just a few of us, right? And so I didn't have the self-confidence to really. I knew sort of the management techniques, so I understood that, so I could really connect on those management techniques in terms of how you grow a business. But I when I think about a lot of those spaces, it's really around being in an environment that's really kind of focused around white institutional values, right? And so versus more holistic values, right? And so over time, I wasn't myself, right? But I found that strength, and I found that strength starting with McBride Sisters. I never had a Black boss, if you will, right? Never had a sister as a boss. I never had a boss that would show up with braids, right? And so that was really transformation for me, just to see that there are other people within an organization. You can see Black excellence every single day, right? And then the transition to working with Mary J. Blige and the team really took it to a next level, because when you're in that space, it's wine, it's fashion, it's entertainment, it's music. And so you're working with brothers and sisters that are getting it, right? And just the whole vibe, just the whole culture, right? In the entertainment business is tremendously different than when I'm meeting with Southern Wine and Spirits or RNDC or Empire, some of the major distributors, or when I'm meeting with some of the largest national accounts, the Targets, the Kroger, the Walmarts, right? They're growing now. They don't necessarily have that diverse representation that I saw at McBride Sister or definitely with Mary J. Blige Inc. So I hope that shed a little bit in terms of the topic of discussion. It's really around for me, it's just a growth and the journey.
Very cool. And TJ, I didn't mean to cut you off. What about you?
No, I was just going to say, growing up, moving out of New Haven, Connecticut, and then moving to Vermont, one of the whitest states, in the country, and then moving to Boston, kind of one of the whiter cities, it's like predominantly my customers, really up until really 2020 have mostly been white. Right. And in Boston, most of my high-end customers are white men in finance. Right. It's a very kind of limited category of for a client base, which that all changed, thank God, in 2020 when people found out. I don't want to jump ahead. If you have some questions, I'm sure you do, about this. But kind of like Chrishon, people in her neighborhood growing up calling her names, thinking she had a tail. It's like my wife for the longest time called me Teflon TJ just because of all the shit that came at me. I would just have to, push it all down, right? We all have our armor, and we shouldn't have to have armor, but we all do. And here we are today talking about it, So that's where I am. And I guess I'll finish before we move on, Charles. My first store, Urban Grape, which we opened up in 2010. My second one we opened up in 2012. I've been up until I'd say 2022. I was one of two Black people in my whole company, right? And I was talking about a time between two stores when I had 27 employees. The other person who was Black, the delivery driver, right? Because no one in the city of Boston, except for like me and Alicia, sounds Franken, right? Were people of color in the wine industry. So the pool is very hard to hire from, right? So anyways, it's tough, but I'm not going to let it hold us back, and it hasn't held us back. So
yeah, and that's a great transition and segue into our next slew of questions, because we talked about what we did before 2020, and 2020, of course, was a really heavy year. We had the pandemic, we had all the racial tensions that were bubbling up around the city, the country, especially on social media. And for many, including myself, it was a double-edged sword, the attention we got and also the stuff we had to go through. So I want to know, what was your experience as the world shifted to buying Black and drinking Black and sporting Black brands after the murder of George Floyd? Chrishon, can we start with you with this one?
Yeah, it was insane. I think I used the word chaotic. I went from 3 states of distribution to 18 states in a matter of weeks. So people became extremely intentional, right? We had the consumer. My online sales went up 272%. So we had the consumer because it was cool to support Black owned, right? Because that came down. I didn't stay up 272%. But also we had corporations that were intentional. So now there's directives, right? There's directives that it must be BIPOC in this percentage, right? And what I do like about it is, outside of the consumer, it might not be as cool to support Black anymore. But what is cool is the corporations have 10, 15 years still in these directives. So George Floyd was not only an angel, there was so much intentional, and that's the word I'm going to use. It's seriously intentional in the support that continues to grow. And we still have a lot of work to do. It's still a lot of work to do. It wasn't like, okay, now it's changed. We're still less than 1%. So there's still a lot to do. But it was an amazing time. It was a chaotic time, and God bless them.
Yeah, exactly. Chuck, I want to ask you that question too, real briefly, especially with your work with the McBride sisters. You said you kind of exploded, right, during that time?
Yeah, I mean, when I started before the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, you couldn't get a meeting, bro. You couldn't get particularly the national retailers. It was very difficult to really get distribution and really tell the story of the sisters, right? But when the whole push around Buy Black hit us, it was while it was a bit unfortunate of the situation, it was a bit of a blessing because of Black owned business, because at the time we had to really cut costs, and then when it hit, we really benefited financially from that upside. And so we had the opportunities to present to Whole Foods, to present to Target and Walmart, right? And so it really changed the direction of the company, from a financial standpoint. And one of the things that when I reflect on that time, the community inside organizations were reaching out through LinkedIn and connecting us, right? Connecting me as a sales leader at that time to speak to someone within an organization that making buying decisions on wine, to give the brands Black Girl Magic and the McBride Collection brands a chance. So I was able to see brothers and sisters inside organizations and leadership positions that may not have to do anything with wine, but connecting through LinkedIn to create a moment to hear our story. And so that was one of the, sort of behind the scenes, the beautiful part of it is kind of how we showed up as a culture to sort of, pull a business forward in the wine space.
Yeah. And I know TJ has something to share on this topic.
Let me just unmute myself. Yeah, and I'll be super quick. And I know there's some great audience questions coming through. So for me, I've been in this space for a really long time. We've won multiple awards for best wine shop in Massachusetts. We've been featured in magazines on the design of our store. And when our window got broken into, and the New York Times wrote about us, and it was like, how is it being black in the wine industry? And I'm like, I've been black in the wine industry for 13, 15 years, 18 years at this time, right? And we had our best selling day in 10 years, the day after our windows were broken into, after a BLM peaceful march in Boston. And that died away, right? And I got to the point where I was just like sick to my stomach. I'm like, I don't want to be talking about being black in wine anymore. I just want to be talking about wine, right? You didn't care about it, 11 months ago, and you're not going to care about it 11 months from now. And then I had this kind of like aha moment where I just leaned into myself and I'm like, this is my opportunity. The spotlight, though it's there and I don't like the light that's being shined, it's giving me the opportunity to do other things and better things. And what that whole time period did, and I'll end with this, is that it got me connected to people like Chrishon, like people like Chuck that I didn't know existed, right? And they probably didn't know that I existed, right? And so it built our own Black network of wine professionals. And to me, so much good came out of that time. So,
yes, I will agree with that. And on that note, I believe we have, I have a few more questions, but I believe we have some questions from the audience that I would like to take now, if we can, before we wrap up. So our question number one, how can you get a distributor to look at your brand? Anybody have any insights?
Yeah, I do, because I work with several around the country, and I work with all the largest ones. It is, and I know this is going to sound very simplistic, but it's the truth. They have to see you, meaning you have to be out there, whether it be social media, whether it be doing tastings. They have to see you, because at the end of the day, and understand what I'm saying here, they could care less about you. They care about selling product. They care about not promoting you, because you have to promote yourself. Distributor's not going to do anything for you. There's just a 3-tier system running through. You have to promote it. So they want to know that they can move all that product that's going to be sitting in that warehouse. They have to move it, and it has to move quickly. So to get a distributor, you have to first get the account wanting you. That's your best bet. So social media, keep it moving, do tastings, and then get some accounts that are dying to have you. Trust me, they will hear about you. It's like a mafia system where one mob boss here talks to the other mob boss. And you have to be seen and heard. It's not easy. And lastly, even if you get with them, it's not easy. Don't celebrate. Don't celebrate. Now you got to spend more money. Now you got to try to stay in business, because at the end of the day, they'll drop you within a year if you don't sell what you said you were going to sell. So again, to summarize, get seen and known first. Work with your smaller distributors and your brokers first before you're worried about Southern Glacier of the world and RNDCs of the world and Empire and Johnson. Slow down. Make it happen. Don't have 10 followers and think the distributor is going to pay attention to you and take you in. Sorry.
Yeah. Great. That's great advice. Anybody else have any thoughts to share on this topic before?
Yeah, I do. I can share. Yeah, Chrishon is 100, right? She's 100 with that. But when you think strategically about the industry, they need culture in wine, right? And so when you think strategically about the next, wine is a declining category. You got flat demand, you got overwhelming choice, you got consolidation in the industry. You have, spirits taking significant share. You have RTDs taking significant share. So you really got to position your proposition around the next 10 years, right? And if you have a brand that's focused around millennials, particularly wine, millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, right? And you have a brand ethos, and you have a proposition that has authentic social values, right? then they begin to sort of think more strategically about your offering, right? But it's not easy because I remember positioning Black Girl Magic at the time from a price point perspective, okay? And so when I would go into distributors and say, hey, I got a California red blend that's going to retail at $24.99, like, you have a red blend that's going to retail at $24.99 and it's an emerging brand, right? That's going to be a challenge, right? Because the brand is not built in the marketplace. And this is not necessarily isolated to McBride's. Even when you think about Mary J. Blige, right? And you think about the number of followers and you think about a global icon, right? There are still challenges in the wine space around celebrity brands. And so in my experience, not only have I had to overcome selling Blackness, right? But then also the industry is really conservative. So when you talk about a Mary J. Blige as that she has a wine product, you talk about celebrity brands, that's a challenge, right? So the storytelling aspect, and if you talk to Mary's camp about the challenges in wine and the future of wine, well, they're culture creators. So they're like, oh, okay, we can play this game because we create culture, right? And so through culture and through our community and through Mary's fantastic voice, right, and values, right, and authenticity, it creates an opportunity to talk about not necessarily about the juice, but about consumers and about the long-term demand industry factors. So I'll end with that. I know we got to transition, but to Chrishon's point, it is definitely not easy. But
It's not easy.
It can be done, though.
It can be done. It's not easy. And I like the thought of pushing the culture forward as a way to do so. One last question. I'm going to ask this to TJ before we wrap up. And before we wrap up, I just want to thank you all for your wisdom, your candor, your advice, your experience in bringing this to the table tonight. Yes, I'm enlightened and I'm encouraged. So I hope the audience is as well. But TJ, I want to ask you, for closing, what do you think we can do better as a community moving forward to push the culture forward in the wine industry, Black culture?
Yeah, I think we have to stay true to ourselves. I think that we have to make ourselves seen. We have to go into wine shops and ask for brands that we feel represented by and that we want to support. Because the consumer doesn't have access to the distributor in most states, right? They only have access to the restaurant, the bartender, the hotel, and the retailer. Try to build community through that way, but also support the brands that you follow on Instagram. Join their wine clubs. A lot of brands are really focused on DTC, direct to consumer. Go to your local shop and go to free tastings and ask questions. And the more comfortable the consumer becomes with being a consumer, the better our industry will be, because none of us survive without the actual wine drinker. And so if we can educate them without shoving information down their throat, giving them a great product, because it's easy to sell something once, right? You can sell something with a great package or a celebrity, but if the product is not sound, it's going to be really hard to get that second glass ability and that re-up. So that's kind of my long-winded multiple answer to that question. But just be true to yourself and support who you want to support. And obviously, for those of you on this call right now and on this panel, I support you. Hopefully, you support me, and hopefully, we can continue to support all of our consumers and giving them the best products possible.
Thank you once again, everybody. Great word. So yeah, sorry, we do have a little more time. Chrishon, if you can follow with that, your answer to that question. Sorry.
Yeah, real quick on this one, it's collab. And I've said this, I'm really coming in hard in that statement, definitely as the new vice president of the African American Association of Vintners. Collab is key. I do not want us to continue operating like crabs in a barrel. I can't stand it. There's enough room for everyone. It's like over $130 billion industry. There's enough room for all of us. We all do something different. We are not competing. Don't let others make you think that we're competing with each other. We need to help each other. There's tons of things we can collab. My varietals from Michigan are not going to taste like yours. Everybody is different. So please start thinking of collabs. Talk, don't be scared. Don't be scared to think of ideas. But we're never going to make it. We're never going to make it if we put ourselves against each other. We're not. It's this industry is capitalized by so many bigger powers than ours. But if we work together, I promise you we can do this. I want to be one of those that always says that I'm here to break glass ceilings till there's no more to be broken. So collab, really truly reach out. Really truly reach out. Because while you can touch us all, and I know you can, I can touch the McBrides just like I can touch my soror Theopolis. I can touch them all. Touch us all, and let's work together and stop competing. And that's what I got to say.
And all I got to say is amen on that. Amen. Again, this has been so enlightening. And this is just the first panel. I mean, we have a couple more panels to go. So I'm just excited to see what's going to happen next. And I love the words intentional. And I think that's going to be a conversation they're going to pick up next about how we can be intentional about what we do in this wine world. And given the fact that we've had more than 10 years in this wine world, we can bring our lessons, our unique perspectives to the table to reach out, support other brands, support other entrepreneurs. And actually, one last question for the panel. What do you think about, what advice would you give to people who are entering the business for the first time and looking for community and support and things like that? What's the first couple steps you would give them? We'll start with you, TJ.
Grow your network. Reach out to us on LinkedIn, right? I'm just TJ Douglas, right? Like, talk to us, people that have been through it already, right? And then the things that we've been through, you're going to think of it in a different way, right? Because you're going to have a different path just because you've talked to someone who's already gone through that, right? I work with a couple of people already that are in the wine industry that are new, or not new. Actually, they're not new at all. They've been veterans, but they're trying to grow their business. And so, like, kind of just talk to them. Reach out. We have the capabilities that actually none of us did 20 years ago. There's no LinkedIn, no Instagram, right? There wasn't that thing called Facebook, right? So just reach out. And if the person doesn't, answer your text or your call or your message, ask them again, right? Do that virtual coffee with them. That's what I recommend.
I gotta throw this in there too. Decide if it's a hobby or not. Yeah. Know your P&L. Know your QuickBooks. Don't just throw in and say I want to buy some juice because you're gonna fail. Know if you're in it to make money, please.
And actually, right exactly on that. I know we're running out of time here, but on Dr. Bell's last slide, or second to last slide, it said 50% of the income or revenue was $0 to $25,000 annually. That's you can't survive on that because the revenue is one thing, but that's not your profit. You have cost of goods, and in the wine industry, especially at lower price brands, like your cost of goods are not there. You want to see something that's $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in revenue. So yeah, make sure that it's not just a hobby, because if it's a hobby, let it be your hobby and have fun with it. But if you're trying to make some money and pay your mortgage with it, you gotta get educated, and let us be resources for you.
Yeah. Yes.
Charles, I would add to that by saying, think about the consumer, right? I think a lot of times in some of the brand owners that I work with, they think about the distributors, they think about the customers. But once that proposition is created, think about consumers. Be consumer focused.
Yeah. It's just like, it's interesting. We've been spoken to for decades from the wine industry and a blanket statement about wine, but I think it's really unique to speak directly to communities, about our culture, how we appreciate wine, how we engage with wine, how we enjoy wine, and things like that. And I think it's just all about just building community and make it a really tangible thing, and don't make it lip service. Make it super intentional. And I love the fact that, TJ, you said, if you don't hear from people, just follow up. People are busy, emails get lost, spam, LinkedIn. I don't check my LinkedIn all the time. Follow up with me again. If I don't get back with you, I will get back with you. But just, again, be persistent and follow up, and know if you really love this, know that you belong and there's a space for you too. So those will be my words. I think we are just about out of time. But again, I just want to take this time to thank you all. This was amazing, amazing, amazing start to this discussion, first panel. We got a lot more discussion coming forward. And I really appreciate all of you for taking your time out to not only join us, but also the panelists for us tonight. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Charles, I'm here with you. And I just want to thank you for moderating such an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
As you know, I love you.
I
I
love
miss
you
you in
too.
Harlem. I'm here in California, but you know, my spirit is definitely with you. This powerful panel of veterans, even though Chuck tried to say he was new to wine, I'm still going to call him a veteran in the beverage world, right?
Oh, 20 plus years, yes, of course. Yeah.
So I just want to thank you again for joining us and allowing, you know, your expertise, your perspective on the industry to be imparted on this amazing journey when it comes to the state of Black wine business. And I'm going to kick it over to a couple of videos and kind of get everybody excited about the next one. Okay.
Nice. Yes.
Thank
I'm
you
excited.
so much.
My pleasure.